This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Investor Connect is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors and startups for fundraising. Please consider donating $100 to the program to help others in their investor and entrepreneur journey. You can find the donate button on the investorconnect.org website. Well, hello, this is Hall T. Martin with Investor Perspectives. I'm the host of Investor Connect, where we connect startups and investors for funding. Today we have joining us Chelsea Toler of the Keep Families Giving Foundation and Logic Tree. Chelsea, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Hall.
So where are you calling from today?
So I'm calling from my hometown, Austin, Texas.
Great. Well, tell us more about your work in the foundation and what you do.
Sure. So the Keep Families Giving Foundation is the philanthropic arm of our family office. And at the foundation, we're working on a mission to help educate and amplify next gens in impact and philanthropy in alignment with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And then also, I co-founded Nova Impact, which focuses on next gens that are in impact investment and looking at how they align some of their investments with impact. And then finally, serve as the Chief Impact Officer for Logic Tree, where I help with World Logic Day, which we're gearing up for here in the next week or so.
Great. Well, let's start with the family offices and in the impact investing space. What do you see going on there?
So a lot of what I see is that family offices are looking more towards impact and understanding that you don't necessarily have to sacrifice financial returns to put capital to good use. So we see a lot of next gens that are passionate about things like climate or global change or gender equality or clean energy that are really spearheading initiatives where they're running SPVs or they're showing a demonstration and a track record that impact investment can lead to successful financial returns as well.
Oh, great. And so what do you see as the primary trend in impact investing today?
Oh gosh, well, primary trend is always difficult, but I can share that I think some of the trends I see with next gens is a lot of them are learning more about the UN Sustainable Development Goals and actually looking at companies to have a framework. So it's no longer enough to just say you're an impact company. You need to have a plan for how you're reporting out impact measurement, how you're communicating with next gen investors and investors interested in impact along the way. Of not only here's how you're doing successfully revenue-wise or leadership-wise, but also here's the impact and some of the measures that you're using to measure impact along your founder journey.
Great. Well, the UN devised 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Can you talk more about those goals and how do you see those playing out?
I sure can. So I have helped with a few different initiatives with a few UN-related organizations, one of which I'm really excited about is UN SDG Academy and then UN Global Schools. And those organizations help educate faculty members. They're rolling out programs to help educate founders, folks in CSR, but really making sure that folks within companies have access to tools to learning about the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's on the education side. On the investment side, a lot of what we'll do is the UN's given us a lot of resources to measure and look at the key indicators along the way. So we can take those frameworks and those resources and apply them just like you would typical diligence for an investment. So in the same way that you think through questions like, what are your financial projections? You can ask those same questions and use the UN resources that have been shared to really diligence your impact investment as well.
So to go further into that, there's many different types of goals here. How do you compare one to the other with certain investments and what contribution that may be back to the community? How do you level that playing field?
So one of the things that I championed early on with our KFG Private Family Foundation was being open to the fact of being cause agnostic. Your passions and what you care about might change. You don't have to only be passionate about climate forever. Maybe you are, or only about clean water, or only about gender equality. You can have various passions, and you can also be open to what does the world need at certain times, right? So if we think about COVID, all of a sudden, healthcare and access to healthcare became increasingly more important around the world, right? Where a few years ago, not that it wasn't important, but maybe that wasn't our primary goal or thing we needed to work together on. So I also think it's one of the things that I'm excited that we're addressing with logic.wiki, which is the impact part of what we do with Logic Tree. And that is really providing and partnering on resources where you can look up and take and use question-led tools to make decisions. So as one example, we actually partnered with UN SDSN on a particular quiz that's on logic.wiki. I can put it in the show notes for the podcast, but you could actually fill it out and take it, and it tells you are most aligned today with which SDG 17 goal. So it shows you which one really aligns with your values and what you care about.
So how does the family office use these tools in the diligence phase? Does it give them information more about the market or the cause, or does it give them more about what they should be looking for in the company that they're investing in?
So I would say both. I think one of the key things that we use in our diligence process is when you actually look at the individual goals, the UN team created actual indicators and where we should be for each of those goals. And you can even look up there's actually this really great tool that shows you a map. So based on what area you're looking to invest in geographically, you can see, oh, this is how we're doing in terms of climate action, or these are the particular indicators within a goal that need the most work in your particular geographical area. So I would say just my perspective is I'm a very big believer in a local and a global model. So I always encourage folks to look at what's going on in your hometown, your backyard. How do you support that? But also see what's happening globally. So I would just say from a diligence perspective, I really love the specific indicators. I really love seeing the tracking that they're doing along the way to see for each goal, how is each geographical area doing so far? And then really pairing that with typical diligence. I always say you never want to remove your typical diligence for an investment, just adding the impact as an extra layer and lens and framework is really helpful. So where I see NextGen's sometimes I'm sure is, oh, do I only measure or diligence this from an impact? And you really need to diligence both. It's almost a little bit extra work, but really, goes the longer mile in making sure we're funding companies that are creating really great change.
Well, great. Well, how do you see family offices engaging in the impact space already? What level do you think it's currently taking?
So I've really seen that take off in the post-pandemic, but also even a little bit before. It's almost sort of like a lot of us have reset and understood the preciousness of humanity and our time and capital for good, and that we need to be focused on things that help advance our ability to survive and our ability to, up-level education within humanity. But we also, need to think about things that have great financial investment opportunities as well. So I would say within family offices and within venture capital firms, we're actually seeing much more of integration and announcements of, hey, we're really requiring that you have an impact plan. We're really requiring that you have governance, ESG, corporate social responsibility. We're requiring that you are telling and reporting on those things as well. Before, it used to be okay to just kind of internally announce it. And I think one of the biggest shifts has been we're really asking for reports and to a demonstration of what's happening within the impact within the investment.
That sounds great. Well, World Logic Day is coming up here shortly in Austin. Tell us more about it.
So World Logic Day is hosted in over 62 countries around the world. It was started by UNESCO, the UN, and the CIPSH, which is the Philosophy and Science Department, under the premise that as we have technological advancement and increase in AI, that we need to have a day to remember our human logic. And we call it at Logic Tree, HI, human intelligence. It's still very much important and should be celebrated, and that humans need to be kept in the loop of these advancements. So for us, that means we're bringing both global leaders and local leaders to Austin, Texas, to the Long Center to really share their perspectives on what they're doing in terms of impact, in terms of technology, in terms of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, how they're making the decisions that they're making, and how can we better collaborate by sharing our knowledge.
Well, this is going on around the world at the same time. How many countries is it in?
So approximately 62, and there's typically somewhere between 1 to 5 partners per country. Something unique about us is we have, established this day to happen in person, but we're bringing in a lot of our partners to celebrate as well. So from UNICEF to some of the UN teams I mentioned before, to the Artemis Fund, which if you're a Texan, I'm sure you've heard of the great work that venture capital firm is doing in terms of investing in women, to the Kendra Scott corporate team and Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership Institute, to Feely, to Nova. KFG is a partner. Point being, our goal for our World Logic Day is that we demonstrate the power of partnerships and the power of collaboration, and that you can not have a scarcity mindset, but an abundance mindset, and that sharing our knowledge, whether that be diligence on impact investment or whether that be starting an impact company, that's what's going to move humanity forward.
So where do they go to register for World Logic Day?
So you can check out some of our speakers and partners are a surprise on the day, but some of the ones that we have featured and listed, if you go to www.worldlogicday.com, if you follow on Instagram, Logic Wiki, you'll see us kind of trickle out some of our announcements on some of the big players that are coming to Austin for this experience.
Well, great. Well, in the last minutes that we have here today, what should we cover that we haven't?
I would just say, I think a lot of times as from an investor lens, we think about what we know and how we're going to get something out of our capital. And I think what I've seen change is that for a lot of us, we're realizing capital can also be a tool for good and a tool for partnership. And so I think while before we may have been more willing to just sort of invest in something, now I'm seeing investors really wanting to be hands-on and wanting to help and wanting to collaborate and to partner and to learn more. And I think that's, whether it's the KFG Foundation that's helping fund some of these projects, or Nova, which is serving as more of an impact next-gen investor network, or Logic Tree hosting World Logic Day, I hope that we see innovation and a willingness to collaborate and a willingness to put capital as just one of many tools in our toolbox to make the world better.
Great. So how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
You can certainly follow us on Instagram. You can check out my LinkedIn. I'm always, for the most part, it's a little crazy in this next week, but usually up for a coffee or a call, and always try and get people at least one step closer to a purpose or a calling that they're trying to fulfill.
Great. We'll include those in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Thanks so much for having me, y'all.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.